Strike the earth, dear viewers. My name is Nikita Zuev. I'm joined by Anthony Simeon, Robert Gibson, and XJ for an exciting Roll of a Tangent episode. Finally, we're back. Tonight, we shall examine another of Robert E. Howard's tales, which can only mean one thing: Conan is also back. Today's offering is A Witch Shall Be Born, which came out in December 1934 in the thrilling pages of Weird Tales magazine. Howard's conception of the story came from a scene he had imagined of Conan crucified at the brink of life and death. True to this tone, the tale is quite dire. In the city of Khauran, blood runs deep on the streets. Death and violence have become formal greetings from those who took the power. Queen Taramis has been taken prisoner, and she is being tortured, assaulted, and is suffering 1,000 other indignities, while her twin sister Salome rules with an iron fist. Escalation follows. Conan is at death's door upon the cross before being saved by mercenaries. There are many twists in the tale, as well as interesting scenes of subterfuge, politicking, and battles. Blood is spilled on the desert sands, on the streets of the city, and on stone slabs as citizens are sacrificed to Thaug. All because a prophecy once said that with one particular crescent mark on her chest, a witch shall be born. So, guys, we all had a chance to read the story. I wanted to do a Conan story, but it was actually Robert who suggested this particular one. Robert, do you want to get into why you wanted to talk about the story on the podcast, or what you find interesting about it?
Sure. I couldn't ever forget the scene in which Conan survives his crucifixion because he gets rescued by the nomads. And also, I couldn't forget the intrigues in the city of Khauran. I find it one of Howard's best stories, and that's saying quite a lot. But this time I reread it in a different spirit from how I read it before. I didn't simply surrender to the magic of the words, but I read it in a more analytical spirit because I know that my fellow teammates demand a lot of objectivity and stuff like that. And once again, I'm moved to say that, as I plentifully said before, that a good action story can't afford to be primarily the most of its word devoted to action. It's got to know how to build up the suspense and create an atmosphere in order for the action to be anything more than just a bore. And this one certainly succeeds in that. A lot of information is conveyed by dialogue, and someone who is rather carpingly critical might say, well, would these people really talk so much? Would Constantius bother to explain to Conan, while Conan is hanging on the cross, why he, Constantius, has withdrawn the guards and left Conan to die alone? Would the usurper Salome bother to boast to Taramis, the queen, exactly what measures she's taken to get into the city and take over? And the answer, I think, is yes, it's plausible, because these egomaniac villains enjoy explaining how clever they are. So I think that works. It's got to work, because otherwise not enough could be explained in the story. But in part 3, I think it is, Howard chooses a different method, and he has an information given via quoting a letter. So he goes into documentary mode here, and he simply gives us a letter written by a merchant explaining about conditions in Khauran. And then again, it works. It's not consistent with his approach in the rest of the story, but who cares? It works. And it works because it's so well written. And also, it has another advantage in that the multiplicity of viewpoints helps to make the reader feel that it's a real world that this is happening in. It's not just an excuse to show what's happening to Conan or what Conan is doing. He's in a real world that's there, whether he's there or not, and and therefore extra dimension of realism is added. So I've got no negative remarks to make about this story at all.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for summarizing it. Um, let's move on to XJ. XJ, what did you think about the story?
Um, I have diametrically opposing viewpoints to Robert. In fact,
I guess you didn't like it, I guess.
in fact, well, I mean, we aligned on the same point, basically, which is, to me, the telling of this story begins and ends with a lot of telling. I actually wrote down my thoughts, and I'm not going to read from it because it's a little bit too sarcastic. I think it doesn't really bring much to the table, but
would you like to collect your thoughts and have
I
somebody
think
else go?
I think for
Oh, yeah.
me, I think the problem is that I was in the library, and I was browsing through Robert Jordan's Eye of the World, Wheel of Time, and to me that is actually a really remarkable series, because a lot of it is not spelled out to the reader, and you often have to read 3 or 4 times before you have to reread. That series has a lot of rereadability. That is, every time you reread the series, you find something new. And I think because of that, when I read this particular story, I found a lot of the exposition to be off-putting. It's not quite as bad for me as the Pool of the Black Ones, but it's not that much better, to be quite honest. Like, I don't know why we are treated to a scene where Salome is telling Taramis that her name is Salome, and yes, it is because of the witch's mark she has on her breast, that she was abandoned in the desert, as if Taramis herself wouldn't have known that about her country's practice. I don't know why Valerius insists on telling us what happened during the usurping the palace revolt, shall we say, when Taramis, Salome allowed Constantius and his troops to enter the palace while his lifeblood is bleeding out from him. He's literally dying. His wife, fiance, somebody, his lover, was trying her best to staunch his wounds and telling him to shut up, but he just won't, because he feels the need to fill us in while he's dying. And then we skip 7 months into the future, where, well, the sage, the scholar Astrius, was writing to his fellow scholar, I think his name is Nemedia or something like that. And like the whole, I don't even know why we are treated to that, because Astrius disappears completely from the story after he just doesn't appear anymore. The only thing, he himself doesn't even appear in the story. It was just his letter. After that, there was no more mention of the media, no more mention of Astrius, and he doesn't even put in an appearance, you know. And after that, I mean, the crucifixion scene is really, really good. I'll give the story that was really visceral, and Conan snapping off the neck of a vulture by biting it. That is just badass. That is fucking badass.
Fucking
that
Conan,
that is pure Conan, man. But after that, it was just like, okay. After that, it was just like, I don't know. Like there were so many instances. The battle between the siege between Constantius' army and Conan's army was relayed to us through words, through dialogue. Again, from Salome's spy, I suppose, through the crystal ball. We don't even get to see the showdown between Constantius and Conan. Conan just rides into the city, shot the frog monster, peppered it with arrows, and then tells us that he's taken care of Constantius. I'm like, whoa. I think the story didn't. I was like really wondering what was the background behind the story. Like I thought it was I thought it was like an early, maybe the first Conan short story that Robert E. Howard wrote, but no, that's not the one. The very first one was The Phoenix and the Sword, if I'm not wrong. And then I was like, is this one of those, to borrow Nikki's words, paycheck Conan, you know?
Paycheck Conan.
I was like, is this a paycheck Conan? And then I started reading up on it, and I don't know. Apparently, the editor of the Weird Tales magazine was so desperate for a new Conan story, and he really pushed Robert E. Howard to write a new one within like a very short time. So I suppose you could say that it is a paycheck Conan. But the funny thing is, the editor, I can't remember what his name is, accepted the story according to Wiki Fandom, accepted the story without reading it, and then saying it's like the best Conan story Robert E. Howard has ever written. And I'm like, the story isn't even really about Conan. Like I don't not that that's not a big deal to me. Just to lay it on the table, because there were some, I actually enjoyed some of the Conan stories that weren't exactly about Conan. Like God in the Bowl was quite good.
It's my personal favorite.
Yeah, that was a really good story, and Conan was just like he was NPCA in that story.
NPCA.
But it was really brilliant. I love that. That story was really good. So I don't have an issue when Conan is not the main character, but you know, it was like I was just wondering what was going through Robert E. Howard's mind when the editor said that. Was he like, dude, I didn't even write Conan as a main character. What are you talking about?
Imagine if it was a test.
Right?
So, I mean, I think that, let's put it like this. The story has a lot of strengths, but I also see what XJ is talking about. I think it's more a matter of perspective of how you look at the story. But if you took it at its face value objectively, I am definitely there with you. That, hey, like, you know, show don't tell. is kind of a big thing. And you can tell not show for like 20% of the story, but when it's like 60% of it or like 70% of it, then it's either like a style choice and you're trying to do something with it, or you're not following the one of the golden rules. um I'll say my thoughts about the story a little bit later. Let's first get to Anthony, who is currently looking at his Conan
New
the
toy.
Barbarian role-playing game. Yeah, his new toy.
Yeah. Among other things, yes. This episode is not sponsored by the Conan role playing game,
But
but
they should be sponsored.
Yes, they should be.
it's got the new. I've been looking through all my Conan. I'm a little bit of a fan. Looking through all my Conan stuff. Look, it's
Oh.
there.
I
It's
couldn't.
Salome
How could
and
you?
her-
How
Salome
can
and her
anyone
sister.
possibly tell that you're a fan?
Next
No,
is the Conan the tattoo. So, but no, I love this story, and yes, I have the misgivings of two of my fellow co-hosts that you're saying, well, there's a little bit of exposition dump here. You know what? Let me just dive right in. The crucifixion scene, that just reaffirms to me that the creators of the first Conan movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conan the Barbarian, they read the Conan stories, because that scene is figured in that movie. Correct? I'm not getting that wrong, right? That's in the first Conan the
You're
Barbarian,
exactly right. Yeah, it's like
So
right
it's the
after
Tree of Woe.
he, yeah, it's right after he confronted Darth Vader. I mean, James Earl Jones.
Right. Right. So he's put on. So they blended together stories from the stories from Robert E. Howard and created that scene. So they took, the character that was and all the followers of Set and the James Earl Jones, and they took that character and they mixed him into the story concept of, the crucifixion on the Tree of Woe, right? And complete with Arnold Schwarzenegger biting the head off of a fake vulture, right? So that to me
Fake
is just like, that's
vulture.
great. Right, right. Well, it was back in the day. They didn't have animal rights activists, right?
Imagine if it actually was just a vulture.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger just winged the shot. He was like, "Oh, there's a vulture."
Right.
Oh, that's exactly like in the story. It was.
And
That
and
would not shock me in the least if that actually happened.
Yeah. So, they clearly love the source material, but it's like this story was really like grimdark. I mean, if you're using a term from today, like story, there's the genre of grimdark, but this story was definitely grim. I feel like it was one of the grimmer Conan stories in a world of Hyboria, where they're killing people and life is cheap and whatever. This seemed life was even cheaper, but it was, yes. Does it kind of like all of a sudden you're in at least it was an epistolary sort of story in terms that it was a letter from that scholar to another, kind of 7 months after the beginning events of the story. Then you have this info dump. At least it was like in an epistolary form, like a letter from one person to another, saying like, oh, things have gotten really bad here. What's up with the queen? She's going crazy. Like, she's sacrificing people. What gives? And then I think that guy was killed off stage. I think she mentioned Salome when she comes back on the stage in the story. She's like, "Ah, yes, I got rid of that conniving scholar who wrote a letter to try to tell on me." So I think he was, again, a lot of stuff kind of happens off stage in the story, but I didn't mind it as much as I thought I would in terms of it being sort of that info dump. But I mean, it was like, even like Red Nails. I thought Red Nails was kind of grim and grim dark in a way, just to think of a degraded society that's just all these people kind of infighting in like the ruins of this old ancient city. But this was just like the sacrificing and the descriptions of like sacrificing people to Thaug, and I think it really built up that tension. And I agree with Robert. Like, you can't just have go, go, go action. I mean, you can have that, but even some of the stories that Robert E. Howard wrote, where there were more action scenes, he did give us a breather. He had to stop. But, you could argue that the breathers in this one were a little more extended. But, you have to think of, like, he's writing this and he has to get it done. Maybe it was for a paycheck. Of course, every story was for a paycheck ultimately, but I think he didn't lose his passion for his writing, but I mean, you know, you need to think about what he was writing under. You know, he needs to get the story out. He can't, he can't, take forever. Like, and you brought up Robert Jordan's novels. I mean, they're like bricks, XJ, right? So he has time in those bricks that he writes or wrote, rest in peace, to tell a story in a much more literary, like maybe artistic way. You can argue the merits of his art versus Robert E. Howard's, but Robert E. Howard didn't have a brick of real estate, to kind of get. So it's sort of like you're just shackled by the shortness of the tale or the room that you're given and have it be publishable, I guess, in his day and age. So, I'm kind of in the middle ground. Like, yes, could he have done it some other way? But I don't know if I have the skill as a writer or a reader to even know how he would have done it in a different way that made it less info dump. But I think it's what you just have to do sometimes. But I think, like Robert said, he did it in an artistic way and in a skillful way that didn't make it boring. But yeah, I mean, I loved it. I was kind of like, oh yeah, I read this ages ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about all the human sacrifice stuff. So but I thoroughly entertained. I think it's Robert E. Howard, one of his better works. This might be one of my moved up in my rankings of the stories I like from him. I think it compares to Red Nails favorably, and some of his other works. But Queen of the Black Coast, I think, is one of my favorites too. But yeah, and the name Salome. I think maybe some of you can refresh my memory, but wasn't there a Salome figure in other literature that name was pulled
It's in the New
from?
Testament. It's in the New Testament.
Oh,
It's the daughter-in-law of King Herod, who dances, and Herod is pleased and says, I'll give you anything you like, up to half my kingdom. And she says, I'll have the head of John the Baptist. So Herod has to go and
oh,
get John the Baptist beheaded in prison.
okay. So so do you think, Robert, that this is the Salome, maybe cursed to
Well,
reincarnate because
it
of?
says so. It says so in the story. It says, let me read it to you. It
Okay.
says,
Got it ready.
when a new world has risen from the ashes and dust, even then shall be Salome's to walk the earth, to trap men's hearts by their sorcery, to dance
Um,
before the kings of the world, and see the heads of the wise men fall at their pleasure.
Look at that. That's right. Okay. I knew that name rang a bell from back in my old Bible teachings from back or somewhere. I knew it was somewhere, but it makes sense that it was. Yeah. So she's like cursed by God throughout eternity, right? To reincarnate. And that's beautiful. I mean, he
Mm.
pulled from the Bible. So if you were back in the 1930s and you were a good little church going boy reading these stories in the pulp magazines when your mom wasn't looking, you're like, ooh, Salome's in the Bible and she's naughty here too. In Robert E. Howard's story. But okay, yeah, okay. I was wondering. I was like, oh, the greatest literature of all, quote unquote, is that's where he pulled his inspiration from. So, okay, makes sense. So there you go. And he even wrote it in like an explanation that people would pick up on if they were good little Bible reading kids, right? So awesome. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. So swing it back around to our good boy Nikki over here. Also a
Boy,
very
Nicky.
good boy.
It's how
I'm sure he reads his
my
Bible.
mother and my dominatrix call me. Good boy, Nicky. All right, so yeah, the story, right? So first of all, I get a feeling of Call of Cthulhu when I'm reading this in some areas, right? There's a lot of like stuff not actually happening on screen, but things being talked about. There's even a letter section, just like Robert mentioned, right? So there's an attempt, and the story, um, I believe Call of Cthulhu was published in November 1928. So this would have been like 6 years after. So it could be that Robert E. Howard was somehow influenced by it, but it's just a very far off theory. But it does feel like it's sort of a documentary in media res. But what it actually reminds me of is the same thing that the God in the Ballroom reminded me of when we just spoke about it, all the way back in like episode, I don't know, 8, 10. I can't remember, like long time ago. This feels like a play. And there's a discussion between all of these characters, and they're not just talking to each other, but they're talking to the audience. And that is what I see in my head. I see a theater full of people seeing this happening. These actors emoting themselves very vividly so that everyone, even in the back seat, could see what's going on. It feels to me like Conan that is done for a wider audience. AKA, we're just gonna explain everything. Compare this to the Tower of the Elephant. The level of subtlety between the two is very different. In Towers of the Elephant, you have one scene where a strange, bizarre creature that comes from another realm explains its origin, right? So there's like one point where there's like a huge explanation chapter. In this, most chapters are filled with explanations or accounts of things transpiring. So the level of how much I trust the reader to get it went from, look, I'm only going to explain the crazy stuff because obviously, you can't just kind of suss out what an other world would even look like around. So we need this alien to tell the audience, and therefore Conan, and therefore all of us, what's going on, right? And it also makes sense in the context. Um, this, however, it feels to me like Robert E. Howard was writing something almost as if he had a cool idea for a story. And then he lost that idea. He wrote the draft and he lost it. And now he's telling us the cool story that he was going to write, but didn't. Do I dislike the story? No, that is not the case. However, I do think that it has its flaws. Think about this for just a moment. In a different world, in a different reality, this story could have started with the guard running to his wife and telling her what he saw, trying to explain it in the way he understood it. There would be intrigue, there would be interest, there would be power in that moment because you're just like the wife. This guy just ran into the door and he's like, yo, the queen is not the queen, but I'm not sure. I mean, I saw her. She talks like a queen. She looks like the queen. But my commander said she's not the queen, right? And so on and so forth. Just imagine that instead of it beginning with, ha 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 ha, I am you, but a twin from a different dimension where you are the good person and I am the bad person, right? It didn't have to be this shorthanded. Am I making fun of Robert E. Howard for the way he did it? Also, no. I understand, as well as anybody, when you're writing something and you're creating all the shapes, it's so much easier for some pipsqueak like me to come in after and look at the work and just be like, yeah, well, you could have done this better. For example, this and that. Yeah, well, did you write the story? No, you didn't, right? It is much simpler to look at someone else's work and think of better things, not just because we as human beings are prone to analyzing and criticizing, but also because there's no horse blinders on us. On the writer, he's with that script for months on end, sometimes years, sometimes decades, if you ask George R. R. Martin. In many cases, it is very hard to perceive exactly the feeling or the nature of your book or a short story. At some point, if you look at something long enough, you'll find a problem, you'll find an issue, and you can rewrite and redo as much as you want, but you'll always be stuck in this forever loop as the author. As of on the story itself, just I thought I would, address this, what could have been and so on and so forth. I liked the parts where Conan was in. I really enjoyed the politicking. I like how tough and really realistic it goes into like how depraved the city becomes. Um, and so there's like a resonance with me because I like dark, realistic fantasy kind of stuff, which is a funny genre, dark, realistic fantasy. But just look at George R. R. Martin's work, A Song of Ice and Fire or The Witcher, to see what I'm talking about, like dark, gritty worlds which try to hold some sort of rules together to make the plot seem sensible. Um, and I mean, how can you not talk about the crucifixion scene? Holy moly, that is some blood pumping stuff. Really, good, um, good description. It has an interesting resolution. There you go. Anthony is showing us a picture of it on screens right now for you viewers. Yeah, it's just something very evocative, right? Like there's a point of no return. You're on the cross, man. That's it. Where are we going from here? Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
cool.
you know what's
And I
interesting though,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
given what comes to mind though, like given the fact that Salome is like a biblical reference, and then you have like the crucifixion, like it's interesting. Like it's weird now that like you mentioned like the Bible connection there, Robert. Like and
Mm-hmm.
he's crucified and it's Salome from a character from the Bible. It's kind of interesting. I never took like Robert E. Howard to kind of pull from biblical reference, but then again, it could
Well,
happen. So
I hope that Conan isn't Jesus, because when someone would tell him to turn the other cheek, would be like, "Yes, your cheek, inside out." You
right.
know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
what else could needs to be said? That was an awesome scene, and like I
yeah,
said,
fantastic
pulled right
scene.
into the movie because it was so awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. It's very evocative, and it makes sense that they took it for the movie, right? It's so good. Like you couldn't let it out. Let's put it like that, of
Yeah,
your sight.
for
You
sure.
have to put it in there. Um, Yeah, I think that Conan works a bit like Batman when it comes to character in a story, where you can have a story that's all about Batman and it's really interesting, or you could have a story where Batman is kind of around and it's more about Gotham. It's more about like what's going on, and then he like comes in and solves something, or like you see vignettes of him trying to figure something out, or he's just there at the end catching the bad guy, or whatever, and the entire story was about the bad guy. Like Conan works really well for that because he's an unstoppable machine. He's not a normal
Mhm.
person, right? Even among Sumerians, they look at Conan like, wow, okay, somebody needs to tell that guy to stop drinking milk. Like, what? How tall is this mountain,
Yeah.
right? So we as audience, we know Conan ain't dying. It's Conan, okay? He's gonna figure out a way, right? Robert E. Howard is not going to kill him in this story. He's not going to die on the cross. He's not going to die in the last battle. So concentrating on the other elements of the universe is the right direction. I would have preferred if this was a bit of a if it was a bit less of a play. In God in the Ball, it worked magnificently because it's literally one room. The entire story is one scene, and it works so well. That's why the dialogue matters. That's why the intrigue matters. And if I were to try and do something with A Witch Should Be Born, God forbid me trying to tell Robert E. Howard what to do. I mean, he's dead, he's not listening. But otherwise, he is a fantastic author. And I would not ever think um, to presume that I would know better. But if I were to give him an advice, if he came up to me from his, like from his Texas home and be like, "All right, so what do you think, Mr. Zoop?" I'd be like, "Look, there's not enough intrigue. You kind of tell us everything from like page one, and then you keep revealing stuff that could have been interesting twists through dialogue, without us as having to like actually experience the before moment to the mystery, right? You're
Mhm.
just skip straight to telling us what happened. Do you think that's the best way to go about the story? That would have been my question to him. and you probably be like, "Get off my property," and take a shotgun out and start shooting me. But yeah, there you go. That's my honest thoughts. I still enjoy the story, despite my criticisms. When I was a kid, it blew me away. But now, as an adult, looking at it through more mm, experienced eyes, as both someone who's been reading a lot and writing somewhat, these are the questions or the question I would pose to the author, and see if you would want to work on a second draft. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you guys
Mm.
have any other thoughts? Anything we want to talk about regarding the story?
I've got one point to make about excuse me, about the uncertainties in the story. I think they added an extra dimension. It's not just the good guys in the city and the exiled good guys versus the bad guys running the city. It's also that Conan is, in a sense, a kind of third force, and that the citizens being oppressed by Salome's regime and Constantius's regime don't actually trust Conan either. They don't trust him or his men, and they're wise. They're wise in that respect. And this is borne out also in the uh, description of the last battle. That's also very uncertain, and there's really good choices of phrases. In the distance, just this side of the river, other dark masses were moving, barely recognizable as men on horses. And that's dark masses are moving. That's I wish I'd invented a phrase like that. Um, and the also, it's a nice touch the fact that Conan's siege engines turn out to be just fabrications, just to mislead.
That's a great moment. I agree.
Yeah, it's like Rommel's use of dummy tanks in World War II. It's a nice touch.
Maybe he got the idea from this book. I mean, it was written
Yes,
before.
Yeah.
yes, that means Howard has a lot to answer for in that respect. But anyway, yes,
Yeah.
um,
Damn it, Howard!
Well, the
yeah,
Allies did it too. So
yeah. But yeah, the main point I'm making is this kind of threesome. There's Conan's wild followers, and they have a good effect or a bad effect depending on how things turn out. And it's very nicely balanced in the final scene. So Conan lets 50 of them in, but no more. He doesn't trust to let any more of them in. This monster Thaug, uh, also you could say he's a kind of fourth force really, because he frightens the bad guys as well as the good guys. I don't know. Goodness knows what it is. It may be supernatural to some extent, but it gets destroyed by a hail of arrows. So goodness knows what it is. Anyway, who cares? It's a nice touch.
Sorry. Anyway, who cares?
Yeah.
All right. So I think Thaug gets expanded on somewhere in some other like book or short story or in like one of the online games. But
Yeah.
I think there was I can't remember if it was an adventure in a role playing game, but I think there's an adventure where like you can face Thaug, and it has vulnerability to arrows or something like that,
Yeah.
if I remember
Nice.
correctly.
Just as
So
well.
yeah, I mean, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't you like to know just a little bit more about Thaug,
Yeah.
Robert,
Yeah, I suppose
or do
it
you
would.
think we know enough? Yeah.
Well, I know. I remember reading perhaps a couple of times Howard's only interplanetary novel Almuric, which is set actually on another world in some interstellar setting, and that has a monster whose name is remarkably like Thaug, but I think that's just because Howard wasn't really all that good at inventing names. He tended to filch names from existing mythology, like Conan himself is an actual name that occurs in medieval chronicles. But anyway, so
Well, I mean, in Zuthal of the Dusk, there is a Thaug, Thog. So he poached his own name, unless it's the same creature or it's because I'm looking through my little Concordia here, and it's Zuthal of the Dusk has a Thog, Thaug, right? It looks like that's what the story comes from. What it comes from, Zuthal of the Dusk, right? So that's another story from Conan. But then Thaug is just Thaug, Thaug, Thaug. So it's
Thaug,
he's not thinking he's like Thaug. These are two different stories, and they're similar creatures. So whatever
yeah,
sells the story, right? Again, maybe
yeah,
he didn't care about the specificity of the creature. He just needed a cosmic horror, like his friend H.P. Lovecraft would create, right?
yeah. It might be a distant relative of Cthulhu. You just don't know.
Right. We
My
need a
good friend
monster here.
Coco.
Yeah. Oh well, but hey, it was awesome regardless.
Mm.
As far as monsters go, he was dispatched a little quickly, but hey, you know, he served his purpose of like creating like a mysterious mood and ambiance, a looming threat that, maybe was a little anticlimactic at the end, but but yeah. I mean, yeah, is this a Tower of the Elephant? No. I mean, I think Tower of the Elephant I think we all liked that a lot. It seems like we all enjoyed that, but that was Conan in a different place in his career, right? He wasn't a commander of men at that point. He was just a thief starting out, probably fresh out of the hills of Samaria, and ran into a cosmic encounter at the end of that story. But I mean, he's a leader of men, and he's leading military forces and creating diversions, and he's using military level, strategy rather than just tactics, individual tactics. So it's a different Conan we're getting here, right? In a different part of his career. But yeah, so it's interesting that we're kind of split on this in terms of is it like sort of 2-2? The two of us liked it a little more than or significantly more than the others, or
I think I'm more in the middle.
okay. So we got like in the middle, and you have XJ, who's
I'm on
not
the
as enthused.
other side of the spectrum. I don't know. I think the biggest the thing I can't let go of was how useless the scholar was, like, to the story. Like for me, it was just like the character himself wasn't even in the story. It's just his letter.
It doesn't matter.
So I think if Nikki knows my style, if you add a character inside the story, the character must be of some use. I don't like pointless characters that were just added for no reason, and I'm not a big fan of populating a story with too much fat in it. So yeah, that little that scholar thing was really, I don't know why, it's just like the thing in my mind that I can't get over.
I mean, yeah, I agree to disagree, I guess, because I mean, if you look at the greatest epistolary novel probably of all time, arguably Dracula, there's lots of just snippets of people, there's articles and letters and things that I'm not a super scholar of Dracula, but it's sometimes that yes, plot needs to happen. I guess there's pros and cons to it, but again, he's got a very limited amount of space to get a story that's sellable, right? So it's like is it the meta that we get too much into the meta here, where it's like, okay, for expediency's sake, I need a narrator. It's yeah. So it's like,
I mean,
does he?
the context of this apparent. I mean, if the fandom Wikipedia is not wrong, it's because his editor asked him to spin out a story in like a couple of weeks or something like that. I don't know. And yeah, I would say if he's given such a tight deadline, I think anybody would struggle, except maybe Stephen King, who vomits words.
Right. But then you're talking about a novel length. You have a novel length in which to tell a story.
So then my question would be, and I guess this is only something that Robert E. Howard himself would be able to answer, and I don't know if it was ever published in any letters or anything like that, but you know, like wouldn't a story that's like of a smaller scope work in that case? Because the editor didn't really even care that much what story he wrote, as long as that was the word Conan is in there somewhere. And I wonder if like I said, I'm just so super curious what was going through Robert E. Howard's mind when he was commissioned with this story, you know, not necessarily written, because I feel like Nikki might put a finger on it, in the sense that this was a draft that he might have written somewhere, and then it was stashed away, and then this guy came in, and then he was like, oh my god, I 2 weeks, are you kidding me? So he just pulled out a stash from somewhere and then just handed it over or something like that. And I really am curious what was going through his mind when he was commissioned with this, because I wonder if he had meant for this story to be more developed, given the chance. This is quite a lengthy story. It's a novella. It's like, and the scope is quite big. It would have felt out a proper book. I think, like an actual full-length novel.
I mean,
if he's into that.
The story was done in 2 drafts over the course of days. We're talking about days.
Yeah, like I said,
So it wasn't like weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember exactly how long he was given, but I do remember that he was given a very short amount of time, and the editor just basically wanted a story with Conan in it, you know. And I just like wonder if like I said, I'm just like super curious, like what was going through his mind.
Yeah, I mean, it was. So this was what, one of his last stories, I think he wrote, right before, and he died. No,
he still had a year and a half to live, and I'm sure he squeezed a lot into that expanse of time.
Yeah. Okay. So was this sort of the middle of his career, early part? My Conan chronology as far as
late middle. Yeah.
Yeah. So you think maybe he wants to do more with the character, and I know he's writing other stories in other genres as well, that maybe he wanted to stretch his legs and broaden his horizon as a writer, maybe make the character more more three-dimensional, maybe, and you have to wonder about his mental state, because he did, die by his own hand,
I do feel as if the story was meant to be more developed, because there are certain scenes in it that was so vividly written. The crucifixion scene was very, very vivid, very visceral, and it's just like such a big contrast to the rest of it.
Definitely.
Even the scene inside the tent with the not Russian guy. What's
The
his
not
name?
Russian.
The not Russian.
Vladislav or something like that. I can't remember.
Ogier or something like that. I don't remember. That dialogue between the two of them was so. It's all dialogue, but the power play between them was so well written, and that's why I feel like the way the story is published. Let's put it that way. It's very uneven. There are like parts of it that's just like glossed over, and then there are parts of it that just feels like so well developed. Like Robert E. Howard actually did sit down, really wrote out that scene, and he filled out the rest of it, and then he intended to go back to it, but then editor called, and then he just like gave it to him.
It
I
could
don't know.
very much be that Robert E. Howard had a polished scene of the crucifixion because he wanted to put it somewhere, and he just used it in this to get this done. Right? It is possible, but I'm not sure of the validity of this information.
Interesting
But
theory.
it sounds very plausible because it does stand out in a good way. It stands out like it's a really good moment, right? But also it stands out as being nothing like the rest of the story. Did you want to say something, Robert?
Well, not to do with what you were saying. No,
No,
there was
no.
a different point I was going to make. Yeah.
Yeah, then,
Okay.
then please do.
Yeah, what's your
Well, all right. I'm going to make myself. I'm going to increase my unpopularity here by saying that I think it's important to read this bit right. Section 3, a letter to Nemedia. So you think, dung, you think, right, this is an objectively documentary insertion into the story, because that's why it's called a letter to Nemedia, using the indefinite article, you see, not the letter to Nemedia written by one of the key characters in the story, just a letter to Nemedia. And then the savant Astrius, traveling in the East in his never tiring search for knowledge, wrote a letter to his friend and fellow philosopher Alcemides in his native Nemedia, which constitutes, and here we have the important bit, the entire knowledge of the Western nations concerning the events of that period in the East. And then Astraeus wrote in part. So all this it's signaled as clearly as it possibly could be that what follows is a bit of news, a bit of background. You're not expected to regard the writer of this letter as a character in the story. He's just there to provide some information. So it's no good saying, oh, I'm really disappointed he doesn't appear in the story again. You shouldn't expect him to appear again. It's just, I certainly didn't expect him to appear again, and I'd forgot. It's been decades since I read this story, so I'm not just remembering it right, I'm reading it right. So that's what you've got to do.
Yeah,
You've got to read it right.
and it interesting because I think in his other stories Robert E. Howard references the Nemedian Chronicles, which I think this survived into beyond the Hyborian Age, and that's like the only surviving record of that age of the Hyborian Age was the Nemedian Chronicles. So the Nemedians are like these chroniclers of history. Maybe that was a great nation of historians, So it's like it would make sense by that token that a Nemedian chronicler would would be writing such a letter and sending it back home to Nemedia for storage of in their histories or whatever. So it's, to me, that is a beautiful sort of echo of his world building that he builds across these stories. So interesting. But I would agree with Robert. I think it serves a purpose. Is it an info dump? Maybe, but is it well done? I think so. So I think I'm definitely in Robert's camp as far as like, let's not read too much into why this character didn't appear. He was a scribe. He was just some scribe recording history, and he gives us a 7-month chronicle. It enables that time jump. I think it was 7 months, right, from when when Conan is saved from the crucifixion, and then apparently he convalesces, takes that time to convalesce and then build an army, and unite the tribes that he builds to go and, take down Salome and Constantius. So, yeah, I think it works for me as well, Robert.
So
Very divisive, thoughts on the story of Which Shall Be Born.
Yeah. Does that bring us to the final judgment, or go ahead, Nikki?
Yeah,
Before
I'll just say one more thought, and then we can definitely jump to that. So, by the way, I just want to say a big thank you to XJ. Like, it's very late where he is right now, and he's doing this recording. You know, he's had a lot of changes in his life, and I just wanted to say a big thank you for coming back
Yes.
to us. And I hope that everything is going to be going well. And also, everybody thinks you're wrong about the story. Okay. uh, except for me, I see where you're coming from. Just,
Well,
you know, like,
I'm
I don't want to get
melting.
killed by these guys. Yeah.
I'm melting.
Wait, where's
I
my
was
Uh,
axe?
afraid,
uh,
I was afraid
um,
XJ might disappear, actually.
I mean, knowing XJ, he would make someone else disappear.
No, he's our chronicler. We can't lose him. He's our chronicler.
He is the Nemedian chronicler. That is exactly
Yes,
right.
he is.
Yeah.
That's right.
One thought that I wanted to talk about when it comes to the story itself is I think that the big cast of characters actually get a lot of breathing room when it comes to on-screen appearances and their characterization. The characterization itself could have been done a bit better, right? Again, I see some of the flaws in the story. I think that there could have been a lot of more of show and don't tell. But again, I mean, the guy wrote this in a couple of days. He did his best. And I feel like this this template, if you just took this and you didn't try to translate it one to one, because let me be honest, anything that adapts something one to one from like page to a screen or something like that might be paying homage, but it's not then adapting something. If you're adapting something, you have to take the weaknesses of the previous medium and enhance them, and also understand that there are certain strengths in the other part that you just can't replicate, like being in the inner mind of the character, for example, right? Like a lot of books do that, but a lot of movies just can't. Right, so it has to be all done with expressions and thought, and so on and so forth. But I think that A Witch Should Be Born would be an amazing X-rated, like a Netflix series for like 8 to 9 episodes. If you took it
R-rated,
down,
yes.
DDR?
X-rated, maybe not.
Or
You know
X?
what?
well, is
R-rated
is
or
it
X-rated?
different? Is this an English problem? Is X-rated something else to R-rated?
Yes.
Yeah, X is like.
Oh, is it?
We're
Well,
not.
I mean, I would still watch that too as well.
A witch.
But there you
A
go.
witch
I
shall be.
meant A witch
A
shall
witch
be
shall be
pruned.
porn.
All right. So, yeah, do excuse me. R-rated,
That's
X-rated
okay.
too. Honestly, get me an X-rated one. Everybody else can watch the R-rated one. I'm watching the X-rated one. In the end effect, I think this would
Yeah.
be an amazing thing to actually adapt and fix, in a sense, on screen. Make the stuff that's show don't tell into actually showing all this stuff. You have like 8 episodes. Each one of them can be an hour. This would be amazing. A Wish Should Be Born, Shall Be Born would be a crazy like story to adapt into a series, and I think it would be one of the ones that actually works best because there's enough material about all of these characters. We just don't do it one to one. You take the spirit of the story and you create something. So there you go. So that's why I'm starting a GoFundMe. Everybody should send me money, and no, I'm kidding. But yeah, so for me, there was a lot of like potential stuff in that story that we just read. Like there was so much cool little kernels that I could just pick up and be like, oh, that's cool. Oh, I could see that. And of course, the crucifixion was already done on screen, fantastically so, by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they
I'll just go back
authors of that movie.
to what I said. It feels like there was a lot more meant for the story that just didn't make it into the published form. I like I said, I don't know if it's just because he just like pulled out this draft and that was somewhere in his drawer and then just gave it to the editor to shut him up, or something like that. I don't know, but Yeah, I do feel like this that it was the story feels incomplete to me. It does feel like it was there was more uh, that was maybe intended to be in it.
Okay. Well, interesting. So we're a little bit divided on this. So maybe what's the final grade then? Who do we start
Yeah,
with?
I mean, Robert, let's go. 11 out of 10.
Let's go,
Where are
Robert.
we?
What do
No,
we
I'll
got?
just say 10 out of 10, I think. Yeah.
Hmm.
10 out of
No.
10.
I
10 out
don't
of 10.
think
Okay.
that I don't think that there is really ultimately a distinction between showing and telling. Although I do get what people mean when they say show don't tell. I think it's not a distinction that stands up to an infinite degree of reflection because
But
showing
yeah,
and
go on.
telling, they both, in the end, they amount to the same thing. There's ideas coming into your head, so you know, doesn't matter
I
how they
understand.
I,
come.
I agree.
Well, if we were in a business environment, I'd be completely on your side, Robert. It doesn't matter how the information is conveyed, just as long as everybody understands what it is, right? But this is not a business environment.
Mm,
This is a work of art. And there are
mm,
ways to do something one way, and there's other ways. And there's just subjectively things that are more engaging and things that are less engaging. So I could tell you a story, and I could be like, yeah, so I woke up, went to my like went to work, and had a crazy situation where somebody slapped me in the end. Okay.
mm,
Or I could be like, on a dreary morning, Friday, 7:30, I woke up realizing that I was about to be late for work, right?
mm,
So there's just two different things here, right, happening. I don't think it's what's it called, sensible to say that these are the same. The information is the same, right? But the way you portray it is so important, because otherwise everybody could be an author. Like everybody could convey the stories by just being like, all right, so Robin Hood is in the woods, shot a bunch of bad guys, found the girl, and now he's happy. Don't you feel
Mm.
those
mm.
emotions now too? No, you don't, because it's just like said in a monotone voice, the bare minimum, and so on and so forth. If we go to the comparison of these two situations here, um, what's more exciting? Having a guy sitting on a couch telling you that he just saw a takeover of the throne room with everybody dying, or being in the throne room watching it happen as heads get cut off and you're in real time and you don't know what's about to happen. Because when the
Well,
guy's sitting on the couch, the guy got out of the what's it called? He got out of the room, right? He's fine. He can tell the story. Yeah, sorry. Would you want to say something, Robert?
I just think that it depends where you are in the story. It really does
Mm.
depend where you are in the story. If you have entire thing being shown, you just get weary of it. You need some telling to vary the
I agree. I
tone.
agree. But this is
Yeah.
what we're saying though. I agree with you completely. This one is too much telling instead of showing. And then there's some stories which are too much showing instead of telling. This is
Mm,
what I think that is like the balance
mm,
isn't there.
Again, I
Yeah.
mean, but again, we can't. I agree with you, but I think like the hard and fast rule is of show don't tell is that's great, but it doesn't work in a short story. You don't have time to tell 7 months of events. You know what I mean? So I
mm.
think it's context dependent. It's like, he needed
Right,
to
but
cover
that's not. But
six
that's not. We're
months
saying.
of
Okay, we
time.
hold on. We keep everything the same. Everything is exactly the same. We even keep the
Right.
letter. Okay, but instead of the scene of the queen showing up and just telling everything from the get go to the
Oh,
viewer
well.
and the queen, you could have had a situation where this is like happening somewhere else, or someone else saw something, or you could be like in the point of view of the guards and them like wondering what's
Mm.
going on. But instead, you had like a person walk in and just be like, "Hello, my name
Okay.
is Evil Twin Sister. Here's my card. Thank you for purchasing me from this company. I'll be with you now for a
Okay.
couple of years. This is my resume. This is the reason I'm here. This is my naming convention. I hope you like it. And all of us are called this way. It feels very corporal. Like it does
Yeah.
corporate. It doesn't feel alive. That
So
first
you're
scene
talking
definitely.
about in the very beginning of the story, like the introduction, right?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
not saying
I mean,
everything needs to be changed, but there's a
right,
couple of
right, right.
scenes that you need to like switch around because everything is tell. There's no showing. Like there's just no
I
showing except for
mean,
Conan.
so
Yeah.
so just to add on to that, to what Nikki said, because if you actually go back and watch this whole podcast, I have not said a single word about showing. I just said that there was too much telling. Right. So even if you took the scene where it was just Valerius and his sweetheart, you could have done that a different way. You could have that entire monologue where he was just forcing the story out, could have been chopped up. There could have been another guy in the scene doing like a interplay of dialogue between them, between the three of them, instead of Valerius just like choking out the story to us while he's
Right.
bleeding out. He's bleeding out. You know?
Right. Well,
I mean,
so here's the thing.
you could have completely kept that scene,
But are
and it would
those
just
okay?
be dialogue. You'd just be talking, but it would have
What's the
different
most
dynamics.
What's the most important parts of the story, though? Like, are those parts where he's doing more telling through the characters' voices or through a letter? Are those necessarily the most
I
important
mean,
things,
no,
or
my
is
point
seeing an awesome
my point was not
or
which
seeing an
is
awesome crucifixion scene? What's
my,
your
my
yeah?
point
That,
was not my point was none of those things. My point is like those
okay.
could have been technically done in a different way. Like
Okay.
like even the scene, like even in the tent scene, the dialogue between not Russian guy and Conan,
The
that
not
was
Russian guy.
that was basically telling us a whole bunch of stuff too. But the dialogue was really really good. That was like so much. That was like such an intense tug of war, uh, of power play between the two of them, right? I mean, like
Right.
that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. It's not the
One or the other.
it's not the
It's not one or the other.
it's not
Yeah.
yes, it's not one or the other. It's like you could have like you could have just done that dialogue in like a slightly different way, and then it would have been like different, And
Okay.
I think like you could have kept all of that telling. You could have kept all of that telling. It's exactly as Nikki said. You could have kept all of that telling, but instead of Salome walking in and then telling Taramis that yes, I'm your evil twin sister, and the reason I'm here is because of that curse on me, and that's a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Even
I can see your point.
You could do it. You could do it, but you could do it a bit differently. Right? You could
Yeah,
you could be
I mean-
you could frame it like she's desperate for approval. She's desperate for this woman to be frightened. Right? So she's doing all this stuff to her and telling her about how, like, I'm gonna take everything away from you. Like how your family took away from me. Right?
Even
You don't have to have her.
even something like that would have given Salome a little bit more motivation beyond just
Yeah, exactly.
being
Otherwise,
an
she's
evil
just
twin
like,
sister.
I'm evil. Like, look,
Okay,
in
all
the
right, all right.
background, you can kind of get it, right? Like you were.
Time. Guys, can we get a word in edgewise here? I get what you're saying. But here's the deal. Like, does the book can that be done in the page count? And I hate to be meta about it, but can he do it in the page count he was given in the pulp magazines, or would the
100%.
story
No, it
need
would
to be
not
this
be this
thick?
big. Look, Are you
That's what I'm
challenging me?
saying, guys.
Are you challenging
like-
me? I'll do
I'm
it.
challenging
I'll do
you.
it.
Do you want to
I'll do
rewrite?
it.
Okay.
No, I
So
won't
you're-
rewrite
are
all
you-
of it. I'll rewrite the first scene. I
Okay.
will keep it exactly
That's a
the
challenge.
same
We'll hold
amount.
it to them.
Yeah, you hold it to me. Please hold me, Anthony. I'll take the approximate amount of words that he has in there,
Okay.
and I'll just
Okay.
redo it. I'll just redo it.
Challenge. Okay. Hey man,
Amazing.
I'm down. Go for it.
Salute.
Look
All
at
right,
Robert.
you
he's
heard
like,
it here.
The children are
You heard it
fighting.
here.
What am I doing here?
No, but
No. Hey,
to
it's
actually
healthy-
give
healthy
you an,
debate.
to actually give you
Healthy
an answer,
debate.
Anthony. Look,
What's that?
to actually give you an answer about the length of the story and
Yeah.
all that, he didn't have
Yeah.
to give that story to the editor.
Oh,
It
true.
could have been a different
Fair
story.
enough.
It could have been a different story. Like I said,
You could have written something better, Robert E. Howard, okay?
Okay.
You just could have. All right.
You could have.
I guess you could
I
have.
mean-
I mean, it's not something you can argue with. All right, let's get to the scores. So
I see what you're saying.
I'll
Go ahead.
start. Thank you. I will give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
For the story being this okay, there should have been more Conan in it. If there was more Conan in it, then I would have given it like an 8. But because there's not a lot of Conan, which works with some stories, but not with every, and it's not the best thing of all time, it gets a 6.5 out of 10. A great attempt with a lot of cool stuff. Just the crucifixion scene, we just take it out, cut everything else off, 15 out of 10. 15
great
15
thought.
dead
He-
vultures out of 10.
Robert E. Howard could have
Cheated.
just given the crucifixion scene, and I
Just
think
send the crucifixion scene.
and the editor
Just
would have
send
been
it.
fine
Alright,
with it
Just
too.
send it. I mean,
Okay.
imagine if that was the story. Conan is about to die in the desert, and he's like contemplating his life. I mean, that would have been an interesting story. Him thinking
Yeah.
back about all of the other short stories that he wrote, like an anthology series of sorts, where he's remembering all of these tales as he's like hanging there, like, well, it's over, right? Like that would have been interesting.
Yeah, but then he gets paid by the word, and he wouldn't be able to buy any soup that week or whatever.
Yeah, but
Fair
no,
enough.
but like, hold on. Think. So he's on a tree. He's thinking
Right.
about stuff, and then he just inserts parts of the old stories, and because he's
Oh, right.
remembering
It's a
it.
clip show.
Yeah, it's
Right.
brilliant.
It-
It's
a
absolutely
clip show.
brilliant. Yeah, it's a clip show. Yeah, there you go. 15 out of 10
All
for
right.
that idea. All right.
For the
Anthony,
vultures, 15 out of 10.
15 out of 10.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
what do you give it?
For me, I'm gonna say maybe it's not my super favorite story. I would say of Howard, so I would say I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. Yeah, 8.5 vultures out of 10. Vultures for headless vultures. But all right, so how about you, XJ? Bring us home. What's your final score?
3. Okay.
Was that a score I gave the Pool of the Black Ones?
I think you gave it a
Uh-oh.
3. Yeah.
But, okay, objectively, this story is better than the Pool of the Black Ones.
Good.
Most stories are.
You said it, I didn't. I would give it a 5, just because of the crucifixion scene. That was just like, ugh.
Okay.
So good.
Yeah. All right. So, a little bit of a spread here on a little bit of a divide here on this story. But hey, that's
it doesn't
Conan.
matter who votes what. The spread would always be like, and then there's just Robert with his like ridiculous 100 out of 10s every time.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Well, hey. All right. So, hey, I look forward to your
Hey.
rewrite of the.
Yeah, that's right. I have challenged
Challenge
myself, but
accepted.
honestly, it's not
Okay.
that hard. I don't think it would be that hard. Anyway,
Okay.
that's my opinion.
Hey, man. Okay. Sounds
Famous
good.
last
Well, hey,
words.
guys. Famous last words.
It's not going to be as good of a prose as Robert E. Howard. Don't get me wrong, but the story will be better.
All right.
All right.
Well, hey, guys.
Well,
thanks for the
I
lively
can't-
conversation.
I
I
Look,
salute
yeah.
you for taking on the challenge anyhow. Brave man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am a brave man.
Cool.
All right. Well, I
Sometimes
guess
it's
that's
great.
the end of it. It was.
Yeah, that's
it.
it.
Was, it was.
That's
Good
It
conversation,
was
guys.
contentious, but it was really fun talking about the story with you guys. And if
Absolutely.
If
Good to be back.
if the audience also likewise have fun, then do the usual stuff, like and subscribe and all of that. And until next time, peace out.
Take care. Thank you so much.